Happy Saturday, everybody. I hope you are all having a great weekend. So for this weekend's video, what I want to do is just kind of go over a quick and easy way for you to build and make your own fairing compound. And this is going to work with either a polyester, vinyl ester, or even an epoxy. And it's super simple. All you need is two things, plus the resins. So let's just jump into it. So now the three things that you're going to need is going to be one, obviously, whatever resin you happen to be using. You know, I'm going to be, for the demo, I'm going to be using polyester resin. And then the other two ingredients that you need are going to be micro balloons. Let's see if you can kind of zoom in on there. And these are sometimes called different things like glass spheres, micro balloons, you know, whatever it may be. And then optionally, the last thing you're going to need to thicken things up and just to make sure that it stays put on a vertical surface is Cabasil, or essentially Cabasil is silica. And just as another reference, silica is the same thing as the West Systems 406. Colloidals. They're 406 thickener. So it's all the same stuff. So first things first, I am going to pour out a little bit of resin. Oh, well, while I'm sitting here gloving up, I can explain why the micro balloons are kind of the star of the show here. So essentially, micro balloons are just that. I mean, they're tiny, tiny, tiny hollow balloons. And that's really what allows a fairing compound to be a fairing compound. And sand so nice is because it's mostly air. So there is going to be a very high ratio of micro balloons to the Cabasil, or the silica. And I don't know, this is just a demo, so I'm just going to give a little blop. Ooh, that was a pretty good sized blop. So to this, because we're going to be thickening this up, I like to add the hardener now and then mix in any of the fillers that we're going to need, just to make sure that everything gets properly catalyzed. And see, it looks like we've got, well, 4 ounces. So let's kind of take a little guess here. Here's my mech bottle. Oop, that's going to be way too much, but that's right. It's a demo. Now, one thing I will say, again, while I'm sitting here trying to fill in some time stirring, if you're going to be using a polyester resin, I would actually stick with using a laminating resin. It could work just fine with the finishing resin or the kind of poly that already has the wax mixed in. However, what I don't know for sure is how the wax would actually work with a thickened polyester-based resin. Because typically, if you're using a waxed resin for wetting out glass, you know, after it's all rolled out, the wax is able to float up to the surface, create a skin so that everything can cure. That's pretty much what makes it a finishing resin. But if you've got the resin already thick, I don't know how well the wax would be able to float up to the surface. So it may cause some issues with being trapped inside the body of the resin. I don't know. Again, I avoid finishing resin for the most part, just because you never really know how it's going to behave. So if you're going to use this for mixing up a fairing compound with polyester resin, I would still stick with a laminating resin. So now that we got this well thickened, or not well thickened, so now with this well mixed, we're going to dive into the micro balloons here. Now I will say this stuff is as light as air, and it is super, super, super fine. So if you're going to be dealing with this stuff, make sure you're wearing some of this stuff. And you will, hopefully you can still hear me. Do I sound funny? But you will actually use quite a bit of this, so don't be shy. And here I've got, well, about 4 ounces of the micro balloons. I don't know if I'm gonna need it all, but we're gonna see how it looks. Okay, I poured in about half, and you can kind of see it's just floating around in there, which is why it's important to be wearing your respirator. And then when you're stirring this,
instead of just coming in and spinning it all around, go from the bottom, and it's kind of like if you're making a cake, I guess, or folding batter. Just kind of fold the resin in and on top of the micro balloons here. And it will slowly incorporate. Okay, and that's nowhere near thick enough. So I'm going to add the rest of this. So far for reference, once this is mixed up, it'll be a 1-to-1 ratio. So 4 ounces of resin and 4 ounces of the micro balloons. So let's see how this looks after it's mixed in. No, I want more. Okay, here's another 2 ounces. Well, and I put about half of that in. So right now we're up to about 5 ounces of micro balloons to 4 ounces of resin. And I guess one thing to kind of remember here is the more micro balloons you mix in, the easier that this is going to be to sand, because it's adding that much more air volume to the mix.
So now at this point, if you're going to be laying this over, say, like a horizontal surface or a flat surface, the thickness that we've got right here, it would be perfectly fine. I mean, it'll flow out and level and just be, you know, a nice material to work with. However, if you're going to be laying this on a vertical surface, you're going to need to thicken a little bit more, and that's where the Cabasil comes in. So, you know, I'm going to have to put my mask back on.
Okay. And this, you want to use this, well, just keep this in mind that the more of the silica that you add, the harder it's going to be when it's cured. So it'll be that much, a little bit more difficult for sanding. So you don't want to add any more than you need. And I didn't add much, but it's going to make a big difference. And a little bit more. There, that's what I'm looking for. Perfect. All right.
So this is going to be my little test board, and this is going to be recorded over a couple of days. So I'm going to lay this out and just kind of spread it out a little bit and let it set up. And then hopefully before I leave tonight, I'll be able to come in and put some PVA on and let that fully cure. And then tomorrow, we can do the sanding test. Ain't going anywhere. All right, cool. All right, so we're gonna put this to bed for the night, and I'll see you again in the morning. I think we can apply the PVA. All right, it's only been maybe a couple of hours, if that, maybe less than an hour, but it's set up. It's warm, but it's set up. So now, just before I leave for the night, I'm gonna put a little bit of PVA over the top so it can sit overnight and fully cure, and then tomorrow we can give it the final little sandy test. That looks to be about as good as it needs to be. So I'm going to check out for the night, and I'll catch up with you again in the morning. Good morning. It is the following day, and the PVA has dried. Resin feels hard as a rock. Now, before I start sanding, I just want to go through and give this a real quick wipe down with some warm water and a Scotch-Brite pad. And I don't know what it is, but for some reason, the feel of wet PVA on my hands, it just, I don't know, it just drives me nuts. So, putting on Mr. Happy Glove here. Just a little old squirt bottle. Okay, so now just so you can get an actual idea of how easy this stuff sands, this is just regular 220 grit paper. Now normally you'd be using something closer to like 80 or possibly even 120. So anything that sands easily with 220 paper is going to sand like butter if you're using a little bit of a coarser grit paper. So let's see. All right, well, there's a little ridge right here. You can see where is it? We'll hit this one right here. That's easiest to see. Nice and clean. And that ridge is pretty much already all gone. Yep. Not gummy at all, and just like I said, even with 220, this stuff sands just like butter. Now, one thing to stress here is that this is strictly a fairing compound. It has absolutely no strength to it whatsoever. And so I've got one little, off piece that I had pulled out of the bucket from last night. So this is about not quite a 1/4 inch thick, but I mean, it just snaps like nothing. So again, this is a fairing compound. Now, if we wanted to give it a little bit of strength, we could mix in some like milled fibers or some glass strands, but that kind of defeats the purpose of calling it a fairing compound, I guess. So, so as far as where and when you would use something like this, well, pretty much after any kind of a fiberglass repair, if you're intending to finish the repair with gel coat. Again, I would probably only use this if you're going to be finishing with gel coat. If you're going to be painting, there are better options. Something more epoxy based, because it's it's just a better substrate for painting. But if you're going to be finishing with gel coat, you're limited to having to use polyester based materials, whether it's for the resin or the fairing compound or what have you. And this stuff works great, and it's cheap. Just to give some prices here, the glass spheres, the micro spheres, whatever you want to call them, you can buy those in a quart bucket for $10, or you can get a 5-quart bucket for like $20. So it doesn't make sense to buy it by the quart. You're better off buying one of those big tubs. And again, it's like I think it's actually $22, something like that. And unless you're doing like a large area, that filler will last you quite a while. So good buy, inexpensive filler, and it gives you a very, very easy to work with fairing compound. And with that, I think I'm going to wrap this up because I need to get this edited and uploaded so everybody can see it. So, so I think that's going to be about it. Again, if you have any questions, this is going up for Patreon only. If you have any questions, please leave those down below, and I'll be kind of checking that over the rest of the weekend. And yeah, hope you had a great weekend, and I'll see you again next Saturday. Thanks.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.